Hi guys. All right, so today we are starting a new project in ELA. We're starting a biography project. So we talked about this during our live lesson, and I just want to give you guys a video to model for you how you can read your biography and stop reading and jot down some important facts about them so that you can do this project. So you're going to choose a book on epic from the collection, the biography project collection. And you're going to read that book and you're going to jot some important facts down about the book that you're reading. So I want you to focus on four important things while you're reading your book. I want you to focus on the childhood of that person that you're reading about, the adulthood once they grew up, their accomplishments, and why they are important. Why are they important? Why am I reading about them? Okay, so those are the four things you're going to focus on as you're reading your book. And you're going to make boxes and bullets to go along with the person that you're reading about. Remember, a biography is a story about someone's life. It is a true story. It has facts, goes along with our nonfiction unit. So I want you to jot down some of these facts as you're reading so that you could go through these slides and put them together into the boxes and bullets. So with the information you wrote down as you were reading, you will come up with the main idea sentence about the person's childhood and then give two details about the person's childhood, right? And then you're going to do the same thing for the adulthood, the accomplishments, and why they are important. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to listen to a story about Betty Skelton, and I'm going to show you how I will pause and jot down important facts as I'm listening to this story. So I have here all set up in my book, childhood, adulthood, accomplishments, and why they are important, so that I can just jot down some important facts about each of those four things. So your book is going to be a book you're reading on epic. This is what I'm going to read and listen to, and you're going to follow along with me so that you can see how I'm going to pause the video and write down some facts. Okay, here we go.
Dreamscape presents Daredevil, The Daring Life of Betty Skelton, written and illustrated by Megan McCarthy. While most girls played with their dolls, Betty Skelton played with her metal plane. It was the early 1930s and airplanes were still very new and exciting. Naval airplanes buzzed over the top of Betty's house, flipping and turning. Betty sat on her back steps and imagined that she was in the pilot.
Okay, so I'm going to pause because this is about one of the things I want to focus on, childhood of the person I'm reading about, which is Betty Skelton. And so I'm going to write down underneath childhood some important things that I just learned just from these first couple seconds of the book, that she liked to play with model planes, that planes were still new when she was a child, and that she imagined that she was in the pilot seat. So to me, it sounds like when she was a child, she dreamed of being a pilot. So I'm going to write down dreamed of being a pilot and was always playing with model planes. Okay, see how I paused it and wrote those things down? And now I'm going to keep going.
Seat. Betty and her family lived in Pensacola, Florida, which was near the sea. Luckily for Betty, it was also near a giant Navy base. On Sundays, Betty's mom and dad drove her to view the Navy airplanes up close. That's when the family met Ensign Kenneth Wright. He introduced them to the joy of flight. Betty yearned to know more. She wanted to touch the sky. When she was 8, she mailed a letter to all the major airplane manufacturers. She later said that it read, "My father wants to buy an airplane. Please send me all the information." The pamphlets poured in. Betty studied them hard. At the age of 12,
Okay, so that gives me some more information on her childhood, that she lived near a Navy base and she visited and looked at Navy planes, and that she wrote a letter to plane manufacturers and asked them for any information about planes. So wrote to manufacturers, people that make planes. Okay, now this says at the age of 12. So this is still in her childhood, right? So this could give me more information.
Her father boosted her up, plopped her into a plane, and waved goodbye. Betty was flying by herself.
She flew a plane by herself at the age of 12. That is super important. Okay, I wrote that down. Wow.
It wasn't quite legal then, so I couldn't tell anybody, Betty later recalled. But it was amazing. As Betty grew bigger, so did her dreams. When most kids turn 16, they get a license to drive a car. Betty got one to fly a plane. She even made the newspaper. Betty didn't just want to fly for fun. She wanted to make it her career. Although Betty wanted to be a commercial pilot, she couldn't. Only men could be commercial pilots in the late 1940s. I wanted very much to fly in the Navy, Betty remembered. But all they would do was laugh when I asked. What was Betty to do? Betty soon learned how to be a stunt pilot. She preferred to call what she did aerobatic flying because there was an art to it. She soon became famous for the inverted ribbon cut. Betty would swoop toward the ground while upside down and cut a ribbon with her propeller. Amazing! Betty never flew alone.
Okay, so this is now about her adulthood, which is something else that I want to really pay attention to, right? So in her adulthood, she got her pilot's license, but she wasn't allowed to be a commercial pilot and she wasn't allowed to be in the Navy because she was a woman. So instead, but she still wanted to fly. So instead, she became a stunt flyer. So I'm going to write that down, that she would fly in these planes and do stunts, like cut the ribbon with her propeller while she was upside down. So she was a stunt pilot. Okay, keep going.
Her dog, Little Tinker, was always by her side. Betty also flew barefoot. She liked for her feet to feel free. At the age of 22, Betty fell in love with a very special plane, the smallest in existence. At first, the owner didn't want to sell it to her because, as Betty put it, she was a woman. But Betty's charm won him over. It's just a ship for a half-pint like me, Betty said. I don't weigh 100 pounds even when I'm soaking wet, she added. I didn't just sit in that little airplane. I wore it. If I sneezed, it sneezed with me. She named the plane.
All right, so then another part of her adulthood is that she finally got her own plane at the age of 22, and it was named Little Stinker. I'm gonna write that down. Got her own plane, Little Stinker.
Little Stinker. In 1951, Betty set out to break an altitude record. It took some convincing to buy the right plane for the job because, again, she was a woman. But the plane's owner relented and Betty set off. Betty and the plane reached a record height of 29,050 feet.
Whoa. All right, that's another one. I would think that actually I'm going to put this under accomplishments, not adulthood. I'm going to move on to my next important thing that I'm looking for, accomplishment. She set a record for a height of flight. And I'm even going to write down the actual number, 29,050 feet. Okay.
Which is higher than the top of Mount Everest. The temperature outside was 53 below zero. My feet darn near froze to death, Betty said. Betty retired from flying in the early 1950s. It was getting to be old stuff, Betty said. But she didn't relax for long. Betty got into her first race car in 1954, and off she drove into a new career. During Betty's racing days, she borrowed her friend's salt-off jet car and raced on top of one of her salt flats. The land's crust of white salt that blew into Betty's face as she raced. This didn't stop Betty. The car got airborne with me toward the end of the run, Betty remembered fondly. She broke the women's record with a speed of 300.
All right, so there's another accomplishment. Then she started racing race cars, and she broke a record, a woman's record, with a speed, and I'm going to write it down, how fast she went and how she broke that record. That's another accomplishment.
115.74 miles per hour. Betty had broken records in the air and on the ground. She then moved on to the water and became the first female boat jumper.
Okay, Okay, there's another accomplishment I need to write down. First female boat jumper. Okay, next.
The surprise is that she couldn't swim. Betty was always up for a good challenge. She conquered the sky, the land, and the water. What would be next? Then she got a call. Because Betty had broken so many records and was good at so many things, she was invited to be the first woman to train with male astronauts, and they were going to space. The group was called Mercury 7. Previously only.
Okay, so that's another accomplishment. She was invited to train with male astronauts to go to space.
Animals had gone into outer space. No man or woman had done so. This was Betty's chance. Golly, that would be the most fantastic thing in the world. Of course she'd go. Could Betty be the one? Could she fly with the Mercury 7? Look magazine put Betty on the front cover. America was waiting. Betty did all sorts of training. She took tape tests to check her. She spun in the briny chair as liquid most people could. Even though Betty didn't know how to swim, she trained underwater to simulate weaknesses. This was me during the war tests, which I was pleased didn't last very long, she said. Betty was readying herself to rocket into space. The other astronauts welcomed her. They nicknamed her 7½. When it was time for the Mercury 7 to suit up, they put on their silver suits and giant glass helmets. Betty was left behind. She wasn't one of the Mercury 7. NASA wasn't ready to send a woman to space. Not just yet. But that didn't matter to Betty. She proved women could do it as well as men. Women can fly airplanes. They can drive cars really fast. They can go to space, and they did. In 19...
Okay, so under why they're so important, I'm going to write down that she proved that women can do a lot of the things that back then people didn't think they could. So she's important because she really broke barriers for women. So she proved that women could fly planes, they could drive race cars really fast and break records. They could even go to space. She trained to go to space, even though in the end she wasn't allowed to go. She trained and she was able to keep up with the other astronauts. So she's important because she really broke down these barriers for women.
1963, Russian Valentina Tereshkova became the first woman and civilian in space. In 1983, Sally Ride was the first American woman in space. Thanks to Betty Skelton, their trips were possible.
So Betty Skelton really made it possible for women to get to do these things. Even though she wasn't allowed to, she made everybody realize that women can train and can be ready to go to space. And then Sally Ride did so years after Betty Skelton had been preparing to go to space. So I wrote down those things under why she's so important. All right, so I took these notes and now I would go back to my slides and I would look at each of the slides and use the notes that I took as I was reading this book to fill in my boxes and bullets. So for childhood, I would think about what I wrote down about her childhood, what I read about her childhood, and come up with a main idea sentence, and then 2 details that go with that main idea sentence. I'm going to do that same thing for adulthood, accomplishments, and importance, why this person was important. You can do a photo collage. This is optional, but that would be just an extra thing that you would show about the person that you wrote about. So this is your outline of your biography that you are reading, and tomorrow we will be doing like a flip grid that goes along with it. All right. I can't wait to see which books you choose to read for your biography project.